Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, but I'm sure you already knew that. If you are a returning listener, I appreciate your patronage, and I really mean it when I say welcome to all of our new listeners. This is a little bit different of a podcast than you might be used to listening to, because everyone else likes to cry and complain about football. Well, I complain sometimes, but for the most part, I'm a positive guy, glass half full. And you know, I'm excited. And you're saying, Joe, what are you excited about? Well, it's about 150 some odd days until we get some regular season NFL football. But before that, we've got an NFL draft coming up. Less than a month away. And we're going to find out how some of these teams, particularly our Pittsburgh Steelers, are going to fill out that roster, make it complete, and make a run towards that 7th Super Bowl ring. That's why I'm excited. We're going to be coming up on OTAs, training camp, preseason football. There's no better time to get excited. If anything, I think the NFL does a tremendous job at keeping us engaged and interested in the entire season. That's where I want to come to next as my topic for today's podcast. However, before I get there, I want to push something that is new on the SteelCityUnderground.com website. If you go and head on over to SteelCityUnderground.com, or you could also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, all the good stuff. If you're following us on any of these avenues, I want to let you know that I've put out a new ebook. It is the Pittsburgh Steelers 2016 draft preview. Not really a draft guide because we don't know who they drafted yet, but as the Pittsburgh Steelers visit all of these players, they get up to 30 visits for the entire pre-draft period here. So they could visit up to 30 players. I'm going to be profiling the players that they do visit in this free ebook that you can access by heading on over to the website. And I've made it real easy. There's a pop-up, probably a really obtrusive, annoying pop-up. I do apologize for that, but it'll be in your face, real easy to click on. And if you don't see that, just go on over to the guides section right on the top of the page. If you're thumbing around on a mobile phone, there's a little menu on the top right corner. Just tap on that and you'll find the guide. And all I'm asking for is that you join our mailing list and you will get this guide for the 2016 Pittsburgh Steelers draft, all the players that they are visiting, some comprehensive information such as their combine or pro day statistics, a little bit of a bio on each player. You will get that for free. So head on over to steelcityunderground.com/guides, more specifically, and you'll see that link there. Now, to today's topic, talking about the football season and, kind of dragging things out. Of course, I need things to talk about, and it's a slow news period. There's nobody getting in trouble, nobody doing dope or committing assaults or beating on anyone, in various places, blah blah blah, in public. So we don't have any of that sensational stuff to talk about. Not that I would want to talk about it in the first place, but I'm going to go back to something I've been really putting off for a long time. I mean, we're already in April. We're almost at the draft. The free agency period's already started. And I never really went back on my 2015 NFL predictions, okay? So I'm going to visit that today because I think it's important for me just to kind of BS and prop myself up and say, hey, look, I was right here and I was wrong there. But, I'm not a complete idiot. And in the way we're looking at how things pan out, I'm trying to change your thinking as a fan. I'm trying to get people to not react so emotionally. I know you're passionate about the Steelers. If I wasn't passionate about the Steelers, I wouldn't be talking right now. You wouldn't be listening to this. But I just try to change the thought process of how this is a business and how things change. And it's just a fluid, ever-growing presence. And there's 32 of those presences that all organically work with each other. And that would be the NFL. So looking at my predictions, I also I'm going to consult this this guide. There's a few preseason guides that I love to pick up every year. I think the number one being, I'm going to plug Lindy's Football. Lindy's always does a tremendous job. They usually have little bio clips on every single player. They tell you the guys that are some of the college free agents that are in camp. But more often than not, they have been dogging my team for the last few years. Now, not 2015, but 2014, they said we were going to be fourth, dead last in the AFC North. I just couldn't tolerate that. I scoffed. I cried. I complained. I showed this to my Cleveland Browns fan wife, and she snickers at me. I mean, the Steelers are going to do worse than the Browns. Yeah, all right. Not on your best day, honey. And guess what happens? The Pittsburgh Steelers win the AFC North. They run north, okay? Probably do even better if Le'Veon Bell doesn't get hurt, aside from the point. 2015, they put out this rag that I just built up and said I like, but there's this little piece, and I'm going to defend Lindy's a little bit on this, because any of these guys that go, like Sporting News or Athlon or Sports Illustrated, they put out tremendous writers, tremendous think tanks. People have been doing this for years. They're not exactly dummies either, you know what I mean? And maybe they don't know my team is as best as they should, because they got to cover 32 of them, and they have to they're probably writing this guide as we speak, and then they're filling in some of the blanks by June, and this thing hits the press, and it's in the bookstores by the beginning of the training camp. So in that regard, it's very hard to pull out the crystal ball and have any type of clue of what's going to happen in the NFL before you even get into training camp, before you even have 53-man rosters. And then you have a whole other 17 weeks of football with 16 regular season games, of which your rosters are constantly turning over, players are getting hurt, trades are being made, blah, 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 right? So, but it's still kind of comical for me to think of how an organization that gets it right so often, as I've been detailing for the last few weeks with Kevin Colbert and some of the various draft picks, and whether or not there's such a thing as a wasted pick or a busted pick, depending on the value in the short career that NFL players have. If you happen to miss any of those, you could always go back to the website and catch them. They're in the podcast archives. But not to beat a dead horse on that, things are constantly changing, and the Steelers are getting it right more often than they're getting it wrong. And you have a magazine or a number of reporters that just they fail to acknowledge that, okay? And it just kind of it boils underneath my skin. It just gets underneath my skin, and it just makes me angry, especially when you're comparing the Cleveland Browns. I mean, for Pete's sake, the Cleveland Browns at no time since 1999 have been better than the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you're going to pick them? Come on. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But it's not the most ridiculous thing in the world to get it wrong sometimes. And when I look at my NFC East predictions, for example, I picked the Dallas Cowboys to win that division. And that division was a hot mess. I'm talking about a hot garbage mess. And Tony Romo gets hurt twice. I mean, you have Des Bryant hurt. They didn't really lose to Marco Murray. They just couldn't afford to keep him. The whole Greg Hardy situation. I thought adding Greg Hardy, getting Sean Lee, some of these other pieces that they're putting together with the puzzle. Joseph Randle, who didn't even end up being there at the end of the season anyway, as their running back. I thought the Dallas Cowboys were going to be formidable. They were a botched call away from being in the NFC Championship the year before. So just an example of how injuries can decimate a team. You look at Lindy's picked the Philadelphia Eagles, who I had coming in second. They picked the Philadelphia Eagles to come in first, and then the Dallas Cowboys to come in second. And as all of you probably know, or if you may have forgotten, the Washington Redskins finish at 9-7 and win that division, followed by the Eagles, Giants, and the Cowboys in the basement with only 4 wins. Okay, so, sometimes you get it wrong, but you go to the NFC North, and this one was kind of interesting. The Minnesota Vikings end up at the very end of the season beating out the Green Bay Packers to win that division, much in the same way in 2014 that the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Cincinnati Bengals in the last week of the regular season and won that division. So I did have the Packers and Vikings both in contention there. And so Lindy's, they had Green Bay and then Detroit. But they weren't necessarily picking Detroit as a wild card. In fact, their wild cards in the NFC were Arizona and Dallas. So the division winners that they have are Philadelphia, Green Bay, New Orleans and Seattle. Wow. Not only did they pick the Saints, but I picked the Saints as well. I didn't even have the Panthers anywhere near the playoffs. And if any of you other people did and you aren't a Panthers fan and you're listening to this, you're crazy. There's no way. They ran the table with the exception of one game they lost to the Falcons, and I didn't see that happening. That just complete surprise to me. And as I grab my paperwork here, I see I'm looking at the rest of that division in the NFC South. It was Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons went 8-8. I had the Falcons in the basement, but nowhere near the collapse that the Saints had, 7-9. Tampa Bay at 6-10, about where Tampa Bay I thought would just be edging out the Falcons. So the Falcons kind of turned it around there. You look at the NFC West. And the Seahawks and the Cardinals, consistent with what with Lindy's had, and also consistent with how it turned out, with the exception of the Cardinals winning 13 games and winning that division. I'm going to point over now towards the AFC, where, to anyone's surprise, did you really think anyone other than the New England Patriots were going to win the AFC East? And it's just every year you just look at it and here we go again. The Jets don't have a quarterback right now. I'm not sure that the Bills are really doing anything other than being Buffalo. And they had Shady McCoy there. God knows what's going to happen with that now. The Miami Dolphins are, cutting salaries and moving pieces and parts because they won the lottery for Ndamukong Suh. So as long as Tom Brady is, not Peyton Manning and he's still out there and it's still Bill Belichick, that team is still there. I wish the Steelers got to play the Dolphins, Bills, and Jets twice a year, every year. Does anyone realize just how many times that the Patriots have not only won that division but gotten a bye in the AFC playoffs due to how pathetic their competition is? I mean, the only time that I think they haven't was the time that Brady got hurt. So for almost all of Brady's career, I mean, they put these teams together, and for better or worse, whether it's Brady or not, and, Belichick and the machine running there, I wish the Steelers had that, because look at the Steelers. I mean, they're having these 8-8 seasons and competing with other teams that are in the playoffs all the time, like the Cincinnati Bengals have been the last 4 or 5 years, always in contention at least. And then the Baltimore Ravens are always, pretty much up there, and they won the Super Bowl that one year too. So the Baltimore Ravens beat us in the playoffs as a wild card. Three teams in the AFC North make the playoffs in 2014. I mean, then the Ravens end up beating us without Le'Veon Bell for the wild card weekend. I mean, good Lord, you ever hear anything like that? Oh, the Dolphins beat the Patriots in the wild card weekend? No, because the Patriots run the table. They whoop everyone's, excuse my language, ass. And then they get a bye, and they don't even play in the wild card. So it's kind of ridiculous. So that's such an easy one. This is, I'm going to skip our division for last. I'm going to head on over to the AFC South, where Andrew Luck got hurt, and of course the Colts crashed and burned and gave way to the Houston Texans to somehow, with their quarterback merry-go-round there, make it into the playoffs. Tennessee and Jacksonville follow, and that's pretty much where I had it too. I had the Colts in that division, but of course, hindsight's 20/20. Andrew Luck gets hurt. You think adding like a player like a Frank Gore and an Andre Johnson, they're going to help this team, and it's like, well, after Andrew Luck went down, your captain goes down with the ship. That's pretty much what happened. They were sunk. The AFC West was pretty much a no-brainer, exactly the way everyone kind of saw it the same way across the table here. Myself and Lindy's had Denver, Kansas City, San Diego, and Oakland, and that ended up being Denver, Kansas City, Oakland, and San Diego. So I actually went out. I remember saying that the Raiders would be better than the previous year, and they were. I just didn't think they'd be that much better than San Diego. So San Diego was even worse than I had predicted. I had the wild card teams as the Chiefs and the Bengals. Unfortunately, it was us and the Chiefs, with the Bengals winning the AFC North. They had listed the Patriots. And then going into the AFC North, they had Baltimore and Cincinnati with Pittsburgh third. And their little comment here is, it's a rarity when defense isn't the story with the Steelers. Big Ben can't do it alone. Gee, isn't that something when the Steelers do it without Big Ben? God, I hope when I see this same article, I'm going to be talking about this, guys, in about maybe 2 or 3 months here when this comes back out. I'm going to be pulling out all the magazines. I'm going to be debating whether they're right or wrong, and it's a helpless argument, because you can't make that argument until you see all this afterwards, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, you're right, wrong, But how do you get it wrong that you have the team that won the division the year before falling completely out of the playoffs? I mean, they have Buffalo and Cincinnati listed as their wild card teams. And they had the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC Championship game, beating the New England Patriots and facing the Green Bay Packers, who beat Seattle Seahawks. Now, that one's not as crazy, but they picked the Baltimore Ravens. I don't understand how someone can see that, or can't see, that the Steelers and Ravens had much of the same issues with older players and deficiencies at certain positions, and how one team really concentrated on fixing those problems, and then the other team just didn't. They gave all their money to Joe Flacco, and they let all these other guys walk. They had lost, I think, 4 or 5 starters like Haloti Ngata and, Ray Rice, of course, with his suspension. I want to say one of the other tight ends, Torrey Smith, their wide receiver. And I mean, before that was obviously they're still trying to find the heir apparent with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. And somebody somewhere is going to hear this and say, oh, well, CJ Mosley, yeah, he can't cover across the middle. He grabs every time. Referees start seeing film. That guy's going to get the flags. He's not going to be a Pro Bowler anymore. Let me tell you that, okay? Ryan Shazier, far better pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and going to be a far better player as we go forward. But I just wanted to have a little bit of fun with this because we see how things end up turning out. And when you're making predictions and you're trying to predict who's going to be in the draft and how things are going to go, you have absolutely no idea how they're going to go because this National Football League is an ever-changing presence. And we're going to see that come up here in a few weeks when the Pittsburgh Steelers go to the podium and they start picking players and start reloading, and they're on their way, that stairway to 7. I appreciate all of you listening. And once again, if you want to get your hands on that free ebook, it will be updated every few days as more players visit. Head on over to steelcityunderground.com/guides. I appreciate every one of you. Until next time, see you then.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.